Sua Williams Theo.
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to stand in solidarity with my colleagues on this side of the House, as well as the members of this House, in support of this bill. And I have no hesitation whatsoever. And I'm pleased that by the sounds of those who were at the committee stage of this piece of legislation, that there is unanimous support from all sides of the House. I'm also pleased, sir, to hear from the Honourable Chester Burrows, who is a member of this organisation. And it's always good to get the personal side and to get the personal stories related to this rather than just reading from reports. So I don't have any hesitation whatsoever. I stand in support of this legislation. And I'll tell you why, Mr. Speaker. It's a simple matter for me. The other day I listened to a story related by Professor Clayton Christensen, who teaches business at the Harvard Business School. And he related a story how a Marxist economist from China was coming to the end of his term on a Fulbright fellowship at Harvard. And Professor asked him, was there anything that he learnt that was unexpected or surprising? And this Chinese scholar immediately says, there was. He had suddenly realized, by being in America, how critical religion was to the functioning of democracy. He had learnt, sir, that the government's role is not to observe and determine what everybody does, but that to create a framework where everyone voluntarily obeys the rules. And he said that he believed that the reason for that was religion, that religion had this critical role to play in encouraging people to voluntarily, and most people do it most times, obey the rules. And he had observed that people would go to church on a Sunday, somebody whom they respected, admired, would teach them. And what he observed, sir, was that by and large, most people where religion has an influence recognize that they weren't only accountable to one another, but they were accountable to their God. And so I want to relate that story to recognize the work of this particular association of Christian churches and recognize the value of them changing the legislation so that it brings things up to date for them, and recognize that they have this asset which they undoubtedly don't necessarily want to purely use for real estate purposes, but to promote their religion and their faith. I'm delighted, sir, to know that the other day my colleague Carmel Cipollone took my place at the opening of the Religious Diversity Centre that was done here in Parliament. And I regret sincerely that I wasn't able to be there, because a lot of the interfaith groups, organisations from Mount Auckland were there. And the establishment of that centre, sir, is going to be critical for New Zealand going forward, because, you know, our history, in addition to the indigenous religion, in addition to the Ratana movement, we also have Christianity that has been a part of our history. And I think, whether we go to church or not, I think it's important that we recognise that that's part of our history. But moving forward, we've also got to recognise that New Zealand is growing, it's becoming a critical member of the international community. And as such, we're also seeing more and more people from other parts of the world who are also bringing their faith. And it does not matter whether it be Muslim or Buddhist or Jewish. What's important for us, sir, is to acknowledge and recognise that I think that we have the basis and the foundation here in New Zealand where we are able to accept that everybody has the right and the freedom to believe in those things which are dear to them, in fact, to believe in their own God. And I think the work of this organization that we're debating is sort of showing to us that they are wanting to do good going forward. Largely, sir, we see that many church organizations today, the Salvation Army, for example, the Methodist Mission, the Catholic Church, all have an arm that are doing critical work in our communities. So, it's not just preaching the gospel, if you like, in the four walls of a church building. It's also out there practicing what they believe and engaging with the people and supporting people as best where they can. So it's for those reasons, sir, I don't necessarily need to know the details of this legislation, but I recognize that what the Association of Christian Churches are doing is basically upgrading the legislation that has governed and has given powers to their board so that there's clarity and there is ability for the new trust board to take on a new role and to utilize the assets that they have accumulated over time, recognize that those who have gone have also been able to contribute their worth, if you like, into the work. And I think it's very important work. In just concluding, sir, I think there's been several surveys which have been released where it shows that by and large New Zealand's declining in terms of having a faith, whether it be God or believing in anything else. But I have to say there's a younger generation that seems to be yearning for something more than themselves, that seem to be appealing to the churches. And I would hate to see, sir, this country of ours reach a situation where fewer people are attending church or fewer people have a belief in God, and then see us sort of clash with those who don't. I would hope that irrespective of what faiths, what beliefs people, even those who may not believe in God, that we in New Zealand continue to uphold our Kiwi way of recognizing people have the right to believe. I think we can disagree, we can have the arguments, but be prepared to also respect that we can agree to disagree and continue to recognize that we're all human beings belonging to this world of ours, of the race of humankind. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.